Hey guys, welcome to Unscripted with Marshall Brown and Brandon Dodd, the ministers at Flagstone Church. For the next couple of weeks, we're going to be walking through meaningful community and how we can build meaningful community. So we're going to be walking through some biology from some pastors. So know that we're not quite equipped to be able to do all of that, but man, we've got some cool sources that we're going to be pulling from, and how ultimately that is how we're designed for connection, designed for meaningful community. So sit back. Get ready to go.
Yeah. Here we go with Unscripted.
Let's get unscripted.
Yeah. So, meaningful community. I think that's one of the things that a lot of us feel like we either have or we're really searching for. Mm-hmm. But then the question comes up is like, well, how big of a need is that? Does it really matter? You know? And I think part of it is because even when we went through COVID a few years ago, we discovered we could do a lot of things by ourselves. We could live in isolation. There's a lot of things we had delivered to our homes. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things we could do our jobs by ourselves. We didn't have to be around a whole bunch of other people. Yeah. But on the other hand, our culture in general, experienced almost this collective depression, you know, and just I don't know, emotional sickness because we were disconnected, because we were isolated from each other.
Yeah, and so what I think you're getting at is that it seems like that there's got to be some kind of a correlation between the connections that we have with other people, the meaningful connections that we have with other people, and that whenever that gets taken away in some aspect, it negatively affects us physically and emotionally and mentally, in lots of different ways. Right. And so I think something that we're going to talk about next week, which I'm really excited about, is the difference between having online friendships and meaningful connections and in person. Yeah. And is there an advantage to either one?
Or disadvantages.
Yeah. And so I'm actually looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah, me too.
I think that'll be cool.
I also think about it though. You've been doing youth ministry for years ago before I was doing, big people ministry. Big people ministry. When I was doing youth ministry, I had what you would label as, for lack of a better term, the loner kids. And the kids that there's some kids that, they struggle socially, so they kind of end up kind of being the loners by default. And you got to kind of work with, building relationships and helping the kids build relationships with each other. But there's some of them that was their choice. Like, I want to be a loner. I don't need any friends. I don't have any friends, and almost intentional about it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But what I discovered was those kind of kids that wanted so bad to portray themselves as not needing anybody, even they tended to gravitate towards other kids who said, I don't need anybody. We
need to be alone together.
Right. There was still, you got the kids that want to be the center of attention, want to be around everybody. Yeah. And don't have a problem, putting off that vibe. But I think even the people who say, I don't need anybody, gravitate towards other people who say, I don't need anybody. So again, I think I'm wondering, I don't know enough about this, from a scientific perspective, a neurological perspective, but I feel like there's something innate in us that needs to be in connection with somebody else. Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because, I know plenty of people that whenever you have the choice between hanging out in a group and then hanging out by yourself, they're gonna say all the time that I would rather be by myself. Right. But then I wonder, and I don't have any research to back any of this up, but I just wonder, what's behind all of that. And maybe you're one of those people, if you're listening today, at least for me, I get a lot of energy from other people. That's how I keep going. It's my social battery runs on being social, right? Which is interesting, and so it can be depleted. And Jesus himself, he's performing miracles and all of those kinds of things, and it's he needed time alone to just spend with his Father. And if Jesus needed that, I for sure need that too. But it's just interesting. I wonder what's behind all of that. Is that I'm just not sure. Yeah, I know that there was. I'm all about. Weird podcasts and stuff. I don't really know what designates weird. I feel like this is just me. I feel like the podcast that you listen to are this totally makes sense that I listen to this about these things. I listen to absolutely. I guess I don't know if I can say it on here. I listen to podcasts that they just seek to answer questions. And it's not really, really deep, but sometimes it is. Mm-hmm. Some of the questions are like why do we laugh, and it's weird stuff. And like,
so
what
why
would
did I
happen?
just do that? Just
yeah,
then?
exactly. Why? The science behind it. What happens to your body whenever it's in space? Blah blah blah. There's this one guy, and if his channel on YouTube is called Vsauce, but he got sponsored by, I think it was YouTube TV or YouTube Red or something like that, to do a series called Minefield. In his very first inaugural episode, he called it, I think it was called Isolation. And so what he did was he said, we've got all of this stimulation, we've got all of this external stuff that's pouring into us all of the time. But apparently, if you choose to be in isolation with no stimulus, like external stimulus coming in, that can make you go crazy. So the research that he was looking at, and he's got a lot more science background than obviously either of us do. But so it was cool just to lead up to it, because he was going to spend 3 days, so 72 hours in an isolation chamber with no external stimulus, all by himself, lights on all the time. Everything in the room is white. There's nothing special, And so was he able to do it? And so you get to kind of watch him, and as he prepares for that journey and everything, and he was surprised by how much that it messed with him, like his sense of time. Obviously just being there, but like his need for connection. So after not having, external stimulus or other people like pouring into him, as soon as he got out, he was like, not only does it feel, he was like looking at the camera, he's like, not only does it feel for like me to give you my stimulus, like I want to see your faces, and I want to see your expressions and those kinds of things. And so it just begs the question. That's something that we don't necessarily seek to answer today, but that I think we seek to respond to. I feel like, I feel like everybody kind of seeks meaningful connection. Are we made to need that? Are we made to like have this connection? Like there's a part of us in the way that we're wired, of that, like we need to have that. And so I don't know, just open-ended question.
I know it's an open-ended question, but I think it seems obvious that there's something in our DNA, that craves that has a need for it. I mean, to your point, the guy that you were just talking about that put himself in isolation, I remember last year going with my family to Philadelphia, just, tourist, do all whatever touristy things there were to do in Philadelphia. But there's a prison there an old prison that's been shut down, but you can go tour it. Eastern State Penitentiary, I think. Anyway, when they first built it, that was their whole thing, was every single prisoner was in isolation. I mean, you see in the movies like someone who's put in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
Every prison cell was solitary confinement. And you had like, I think they even delivered their meals and stuff there. And you had, this tiny cell with like a little bit of light coming in from windows and stuff. And they discovered like how debilitating that was to these prisoners who, like, part of it was the punishment, like you've done a crime and you need to be, punished for that. But they realized like we may be overdoing it a little bit as far as not letting them have any kind of interaction. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's something to be said for it. And I know you looked up a couple of things and I did as well. Like I feel like for sure, at least in the last century, if not earlier than that, we've kind of discovered, psychologists and neurologists have kind of discovered like there's something physiological, besides emotional and spiritual. There's something physiological that causes us to crave that connection, and not just being in a room full of people. I mean, you can be on the busiest subway in New York and still be completely alone, even though you're surrounded by all those people. But actually having interaction and connection with some other people in your life. Yeah. So I know you looked up some stuff. So what'd you find out?
Well, first off, I thought it was interesting too that Marshall and I, via the podcast title Unscripted and all of that, we look up our own things and we come up. I mean, at least at the verses and things to kind of thread through and all of that stuff too. But it seems like that the person that we both found somebody. His name is Matthew Lieberman. He wrote the book Social: Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect. And so I can't recommend it just yet because I haven't read it, although it seems really interesting. It probably is.
Excerpts look really good.
Yeah, it probably is over my head whenever it's coming to neurons and circuit breakers and all these things. But one thing that, at least in the beginning is that, I'll just quote it right here, so that our brains are wired for reaching out and interacting with other people. Like that's what we're wired for. This is coming from a a doctor, a neurologist that studies these kinds of things and has performed these kinds of things. And so just a couple of things that, right here, there's an article that was kind of focused on this, but it was published by berkeley.edu. So at least mildly reputable.
Yeah.
Brown University was also on this website and stuff too.
No relation.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, I think it's a little higher learning than Marshall Brown and Brandon Dodd podcast. Yes. But they had a couple of things they said, and I thought it was very complex. And I've just got this piece of paper here, if you can hear that. They said that our brains are actually wired for not just connection, but a few specific things. We're wired for empathy. We are wired, and whenever I say wired, I mean that there are neurological pathways that specifically are firing whenever we accomplish these or are searching for these connections. Whenever those connections are made, it's like those things are happening. So we're wired for generosity and cooperation. I thought that was interesting too. We're wired for love. I think that one's a little bit more easy to grasp, but we can talk about it in a second. And we're wired for touch at the same time too.
Yeah.
So just to touch a little bit of those things, there's a bunch of different studies, and if you want, actually in the podcast description, we can put all of the articles and stuff that you and I are both citing and all of that. But we're wired for empathy. So there's this neuroscientist named Tor Wager or something. I feel like if his name is Tor, he's not American, but I'm just going to go out there and say, they found whenever they were studying empathy and how our brains are wired for empathy, that there's a particular brain circuit that's dedicated specifically to empathic care. So whenever we see somebody on the side of the road, I'd be like, you've got kids. I've got kids. You see any kid fall down and scrape their knee or bonk their head or something like that, and that wincing, just it's not controllable. That wincing that you feel, you just kind of tighten up a little bit. It's this emphatic. I see and I understand.
Yeah. Now I'm just thinking, initially when I see even a video like that, my first instinct is to laugh. Yeah. But then yes, I do the wincing.
Laughter immediately, because you're a pastor. Immediately preceding.
Yes. No, I'm just kidding. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
I have people that send me kids falling. In fact, man, I don't know if you say this on the podcast.
You're about to.
I'm about to.
Yeah.
There's a page called Kids Getting Hurt.
Yeah.
And
I found another one besides that too.
Okay, we'll add this in the bio and stuff too underneath the. Anyway, it's just it's nothing gravely terrible or something. It's just like you said, that you can chuckle at. But there's a particular circuit. Think of a circuit breaker or something. In our house and everything, or a circuit board that it fires. That whenever we see that we are. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're at in the world or what culture that you're a part of. There's a part of us that says, I connect with you, and there's a part of us that seek to help. Now, obviously, there's levels to. I'm going to run to the kid, and I'm going to take him to his mom, or I'm going to take care of him, and I'm going to meet all his needs, and just the wincing and where's that kid's mom? But there's still this emphatic need for those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But that particular circuit, it activates and it encourages acts of selflessness and compassion.
But I wonder if also. Not having done any of this research, I wonder if the opposite of that is true also, in that if I hope to feel empathy from people when I'm going through something, there's something, same part of the brain that naturally craves, not only reacts to that, but that actually craves that too. I want people, not in a selfish way, but I want to feel like somebody else feels my pain.
Yeah.
And when I don't have that, I want to have a connection with somebody where I can be empathetic towards whatever they're going through, but the same part of my brain also wants to feel that empathy from them when I'm going through some kind of difficulty too. I would imagine it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to Dr. Lieberman, but I would imagine it's the same thing.
We need to know. I would think that those circuits are similar.
I would think so too.
The output that we have of empathy is the same circuit that's going off of the input that we hope to receive of empathy as well. That's the connection. If you and I are talking right here, that you and I are both able to say, oh yeah, we both feel that together. And it's a connection that we have just simply through experience.
Right. Like
I think is interesting too.
Yeah.
Another thing that they said is that we're wired for generosity and cooperation, which I was like, what the... we're wired to be generous and to cooperate. There's a study, and I don't have the scientists here. There's a study done that it's two people, say you and I. We're not in the same room, but if I'm in charge, I have the opportunity to either it's some kind of a game or something. I can just, if I complete this task on my own, I get $60 and you get no dollars.
Okay.
Sorry, buddy. But if we complete this task together, then we both get $40.
Okay.
So if I complete the task on my own, I get $60.
Yeah.
But if I include you in that, then we both get $40.
Yeah.
Now, what would be insane would be for me to include you in that.
Yeah. Because you're going to get 60 instead of 40.
Yeah, I could get $20 more.
Yeah.
That's a lot, right? But what's crazy is that, like, with no other like incentives, if I have the option, supposedly, if I have the option neurologically to include somebody else and get mutual benefit, generosity plus cooperation, that the majority of people chose that option instead of the $60.
Yeah. But you can see that play out also. I mean, one of the things, we talk about, okay, just from a church perspective, when people want to be a part of a particular church family, they're more inclined to go to one where they feel like they can be included. Hey, we're working on something together. I'm not just sitting and consuming and walking away. I mean, some people want that, but a lot of people, they really want to be connected to a church family of some kind. They want to feel like we're in this together. Not just I'm receiving empathy and care from this church, but I'm locking arms with this church, and we are actually doing something, accomplishing something together. But I think you see that in workplaces too. I think that, like, people who want to be a part of a particular, like, I'm at this job, but I want to move to this job. Well, why is the reason? Sometimes it's salary and those kind of things, but a lot of times it's the culture. Do I feel like I'm part of a team where we're accomplishing something together, or am I just, grinding it out? Yeah, I might be a part of a team, but it's really about me, and accomplishing, what I need to accomplish, either so that I don't get fired or that I get more money. And people will even walk away from maybe a higher paying job because of the culture of, we're working in this together. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It seems like there's options where, you know what, I can just forsake all teamwork. Yeah. Because I know that I can get it done more efficiently and in all the ways. Yeah. And this project will be done. And sometimes there's a need for that. Right. Of like, you know what, I just got to get it done.
Yes. That's true.
So if you're in the workplace today and you're like, hey, I just got to get it done, know that there's time and a place for that. But there's also something to be said for, just like you said, man, we're locking arms in this in the workplace. Like, we accomplished this. Our team did well. And whenever the boss says, man, good job, team, there's this collective, like, man, we did it. Like, we finished this quarter in the green and not in the red. Yeah. And we're okay. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Couple more things. We're wired for love. I think this is a little bit easier for us to see, because one of the very first responses to see that we're wired for love, actually, I found there's a researcher named Martha Welch, and she came up with this calming cycle theory, which I'm just going to read it right here. Hypothesizes that the earliest relationship between the mother and infant actually begins before birth via the conditioning of the mother and baby's autonomic nervous systems. So while the baby is in utero, there is a connection that's being formed where their heartbeats can sync up, and chemical balancing that is happening right there, that after the baby is born, actually they work together in, which is so cool. This is why Morgan could calm my son so much easier than I could, at least in the beginning, because there is this emotional bond, this oxytocin bond and stuff too, that whenever the baby is in distress, that being physically close and physically touching or breastfeeding or something like that, there's something that's happening physiologically that's connecting them that has to do with love. And that's not learned. That's just something that's happening.
Right. I think, so if I can go a little bit different, psychological person, I mean, I don't know, the one psychology class that I took in college, I learned about this, but my wife knows a whole lot more about this kind of stuff because she has lots of degrees and she teaches some of this kind of stuff.
She's smart.
Yeah. But I know this guy, Maslow, back in the 1900s created, created the hierarchy of needs. Yeah. So if you ever seen a picture of it, it's like a pyramid, and like you start out with your basic needs and you kind of move up to these different levels as you move towards like a fully emotionally healthy and fully functioning human being. And so the first level, especially when you start out, like newborns and stuff, but you have physiological needs. So I have to have food, I have to have oxygen, I have to have water, those kind of things. The next level is I have to have shelter, and not just like I have to have a roof over my head, but I need to feel secure. I need to feel safe. So those are my two, and those are kind of connected because it's a physical need. If I don't have food, water, and air, and if I don't have some place to protect myself, like things are going to go bad.
Yeah. All of the other stuff fades away to make sure that you have that.
Yeah. But then the very next need, and you get way on up to where you're getting like self-esteem and that kind of stuff. But the very next need after your physiological and safety and shelter is I need to have a sense of love and belonging and connection. Like it is like Maslow said, that is one of the basic needs that all human beings have. And if I get stuck in a level where I don't have that, or if I get to a place in life where I don't have that, it impacts just how I function as a human being. Just my own physical health, my own mental health is affected by that if that particular need is not being met. And it starts, supposed to start in childhood, where you feel connected to the people that you're in a family with. You feel like there's a sense of belonging, but the need doesn't go away. Like I grew out of childhood to adulthood. Obviously, I still need oxygen, water, and food. Like the need doesn't go away, and it may be met on a different level when I'm a kid, but the need never goes away. So think about like how important it is, according to Maslow, like right after making sure that I've got some kind of protection from the elements and some kind of food and water, the very next need that I have is connection, belonging. And going back to what we were talking about, when we first started this conversation, like that is part of my DNA. That is part of what I'm wired for. And if that need is not being met, there's a basic part of what makes me that is missing.
Yeah. So this is in the 1900s.
Yeah. Well, in 1940s, I mean, it's...
Yeah, so just shy of 100
about 80 years ago, yeah.
So this guy that we've been talking about, Matthew Lieberman, at least we're quoting him a lot. I really hope he's a reputable source. He seems to be reputable, at least from the things that we've seen. Yeah. He actually said, he points to research that showed that, just to like triple down on that point, that having social connection is just as important to health outcomes as not smoking.
That's crazy.
Which I feel like I've heard that before, but man.
Yeah.
Like that's, if we are... if those things are taken away from us, or if we don't have those things, the lifespan and the health of that person is just as much as not smoking.
It's diminished, It decreases your potential for a longer life.
Yeah.
For sure.
And he said that our experience of pain is lessened by the presence of those that we love, and our sense of worth is connected to our social standing more so than our monetary wealth.
Yeah. And this guy, Lieberman, actually scanned your brain. He did, like all the research that he did, like seeing what parts of these neurons, what parts of your brain like light up or, start firing, in different situations. And the same part of your brain that is activated when you experience physical pain is the same part of your brain that's activated when you experience like disconnection.
Man.
Like there's your brain doesn't even know the difference between physical pain and being isolated and alone.
Yeah.
It affects your brain the same way.
I read, this is crazy, and we can cite these articles, but it's within this article I read that, so if you have physical pain, what do? You take Tylenol, ibuprofen, something like that to curb the pain. It's been found that kind of same social pain, that ibuprofen and Tylenol helps with that pain too.
Like when you're feeling alone and stuff?
Yeah.
Because it's
the same neurological pathways.
Yeah.
Now, this is just in the article. I'm like, man, that seems like it's crazy.
Yeah.
But apparently that's true.
So, well, I'm going to interrupt what you're about to say. Go ahead.
Go for it. No, the last thing that I was going to say is that we're wired for touch also. And that the only thing that I found interesting about this is like, do you remember back in grade school whenever you would, brush past your crush in the hallway? Okay.
I feel like we're getting a peek into the life of Brandon Dodd.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just talk about me.
Yeah.
You brush past your crush in the hallway and like your arms just touch just a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a part of your brain that fires off. That's like, it's this connection, this bonding chemical and stuff like that goes off of like, ooh, I just feel closer.
Yeah.
And they might not even realize, they might not care at all or have felt that at all, but this little brush, this little physical touch and stuff means a lot to your brain that pushes things together.
Yeah.
And obviously that goes a lot farther whenever you're talking about like sex and marriage and kissing and those kinds of things and hand holding. And I mean, even non-sexual physical touch and stuff too. The pat on the back of how a son that doesn't feel appreciated by his father, whenever he gets the pat on the back, it's like, whoa, this is a very big moment. That's just strictly a pat on the back.
Well, it's just if somebody got, like you were talking about, like, prison systems or things like that again, if I don't have just handshakes, a hug, that kind of stuff, if I go for a long period of time without that, it does impact me, not just mentally, but even my physical health too, for sure. So I think what we're trying to say is from what little we have read and researched and maybe even our own personal experience, I mean, we both agree, like, we are wired for relationships. We are wired for connection, for not just acquaintances, but a meaningful community. And by community, that could be 1 or 2 people, it could be 100 people, whatever. But I have this physiological need to have other people in my life that I'm interacting with. But I think Scripture speaks into that. I think that's something that you can look at how God created this world and God created us and go, okay, yeah, He made us for that.
Yeah, and I mean, even with I don't know if any of these guys are Christians. I don't know if any of these guys believe in God or anything. Because what's crazy is that if we've got Scripture, I mean, that shows us that we've, if to get really heady, if God Himself is the Godhead 3 in 1, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, then He in His nature is a communal being. Right. And if we're made in His image, then there's a part of us that, and it can be our actual wirings and stuff, but our soul as well is like, we need connection with other people. Yeah. But so we've known that as Christians for a really long time, or as people that, believe in Scripture and believe in the Bible and all that. But you can kind of go two ways of like, oh yeah, well, I knew that we're social creatures, and that's just because we've evolved into social creatures. And so we've got these parts of our brain that fire off and stuff like that, because it's a survival instinct and stuff, and this evolution and everything too. But what's cool is that if we're God-fearing people, that we can look at that and be like, yeah, that's just the way that God designed us. Right. He designed us to be in community.
But Scripture even says that's how God designed us. I mean, if you go to the story of creation in Genesis chapters 1 and 2, like, God creates everything. God creates the heavens, the earth, the light, the planets, the animals, the trees, the flowers, all those kind of things. But in Genesis chapter 2, when it talks about how all these other animals had a mate, and Adam, the first man, didn't have one. And so God created Eve. God created this woman. And you can look at that and go, well, it's just, Adam didn't have anybody to procreate with, so God made Eve. And that's not all there is to it. Because if you look there in Genesis chapter 2, the words are, God looked and said, it's not good for man to be alone. It doesn't say it's not good for man to have nobody to have sex with. That's not why God created Eve. He's looking at Adam and going, Adam's out here all by himself. And if we have Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, if we in heaven are connected in a relationship with each other, we're three, but we're one, and we won't even get into all that today. But just how can we create this being in our image and not have community for Him to be a part of? It's not good for mankind to be alone. God knew that from the very beginning. I think that's why He created us that way. Like, we have this craving that God put in us specifically to be in life with each other. Yeah. And to just be super clear and stuff too, he made Eve as a mate, as a suitable helper. The real the scriptures for helper and all of that are like an opposite to him. Right. Somebody that's just filling in the gaps.
The same that's opposite. Yeah. Which is super, super interesting and fascinating. But apparently the animals weren't enough. And so what we're not saying is that everybody has to get married. You have to find your mate and stuff too. No. It's about connection.
But we need people in our lives.
Yeah. I had one of my favorite pastors, Ben Stewart, he said a long time ago, and I've totally said it without quoting him, so I want to do that. He's like, there's just something different about watching a sunset with Fido and watching sunset with a human being. Yeah. There's something more fulfilling about that. And something that meets our needs socially. Yeah. And so I think that we need to have that.
Yeah. Well, and you go centuries later, the wisest man that ever lived, Solomon, writes this book in the Bible called Ecclesiastes. In the middle of, and by the way, when he writes Ecclesiastes, he's kind of at the end of his life, and he's kind of going. It feels like he's going through depression.
He's going through some crisis.
he had everything. He had all the power, all the money, all the women, just everything that we say we would want out of life. He had it, and he's like, man, this sucks. Like, I'm still feeling empty. In the middle of him kind of processing through all that, he says in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, he says it 2 or 3 ways. Like, 2 is better than 1. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. But he has this one part as he's describing that. He's like, if somebody falls down, they got somebody with them, that person can help them up. I feel sorry for the man who falls down and has no one to help him up. What's he saying? We need people in our lives, not just to feel empathy, but we need that, and to help us up. After when something goes wrong, I need somebody in my life to help me through that. When I'm trying to accomplish something, I need somebody in my life to help me do that. It just goes better when I've got somebody with me. I've never seen the show Alone. Have you seen the show Alone?
No.
But I've heard lots of things about it. And the whole premise of the show is they take these people and send them out in the wilderness and see how long you can survive out there by yourself. And when it gets down to, now they'll get injured, they'll run out of food, like all sorts of reasons why they come walking back from, this frozen tundra that they're staying in by themselves. But a lot of times, multiple times, one of the reasons that those guys just come walking in like, I can't do this anymore, is because they have been alone for so long and haven't had any kind of interaction, and just the mental and emotional toll that is taken on them is worse than the physical toll of living out in the wilderness and scrounging for food and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And they can't be alone. I think that's what Solomon is getting at there. Like, we are not supposed to walk through this life by ourselves. We need somebody else in our lives.
And he pities the man that is alone.
Yeah, I feel sorry for him.
And man, if you feel alone today, just know that, number one, we're not pitying you, but just to realize that I wonder how much of it is a choice, and how much of it that we can say, you know what? Am I putting myself in situations where I'm not alone?
Yeah.
Am I putting myself in situations where I can be in community, meaningful community? Am I putting myself out there? And maybe we've been hurt in the past. Maybe our friends have left us, or relationships have failed. But man, to be alone, just with no people to pick you up when you're down, man, whenever you're going through stuff, that stinks.
Yeah.
And I pray right now, whoever's going to listen to this and everything, that you can find that community, you can find those people that are there with you.
Yeah.
And to really finish off our discussion here, what's cool is that Jesus himself, like God in human form, which he could totally be isolated and have all of his needs met and something like that. But something about the human Jesus, the physiological, biological Jesus, needed community too.
Yeah. Yeah. Matter of fact, one of the things I was telling Brandon about ahead of time, like, before Jesus went to the cross, when he's in the garden and he knows what's getting ready to happen, he's getting ready to be arrested. He's going to go through this trial. He's going to go through this torture. He's going to die. He already knows that's going to happen. And he goes, kind of off by himself. But even in that moment, when there's nobody else who's going to experience what he's going to experience except for him, he still takes his buddies with him. He still takes these 3 guys when he's like, I need you guys here with me. And even when he goes off a little further away from them to pray, and he comes back and they're asleep, this part of him is like, what the heck, man? And it's a peek into, as you said, the human side of Jesus. Like, I want to know someone is suffering here with me. I know you guys can't experience what I'm experiencing, but I want to know that you feel it and that you're here with me in it. And so, to your point, just the fact that, I don't know whoever's watching this where you are in your faith, if you even have any faith at all. Just know that we believe we have a Savior who knows what it's like both to be alone and to search for that community and to rely on that community of people. Because that was a need of his, and he recognizes the difficulty of not having that, and he wants something better than that. He wants something better than loneliness for you. He wants you to have that community. He wants you to have those relationships and that connection.
Right. So that's pretty much we're designed. Yeah, we believe we're designed for connection. So then the question is this, and this is what we're going to talk about next week. The question is, what does that healthy what is a healthy connection, a meaningful connection? What does that look like? And
Yeah.
then specifically, I think you and I are kind of nuancing that conversation of like,
Yeah.
well, I've got lots of friends online, or I've got lots of people that have deep, intimate friendships with people that they've never met before.
Yeah.
And so
Well, at
what
least
does that
never
look
been in the same physical room with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like to have a
Yeah.
meaningful community connection with other people?
Yeah. So we'll talk about that next time.
Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you guys for your time today, and we'll see y'all next week.